Okay, let's put on the goggles. As Stace underlined, embodied carbon emissions associated with material production, transportation, construction, and end-of-life scenarios are critical. And general contractors like Skanska can make a big impact in addressing and reducing these emissions significantly in built environments. Embodied carbon is expected to be responsible for almost half of total new construction emissions until 2050. And as general contractors, we are in construction business that we would like to grow, but we have the ability and responsibility to provide solutions to minimize the climate impact of the structures that we build. While we are expected to be doubling the amount of building floor space in the world in the next 35 years, which is equivalent to building an entirely new New York City every 35 days, what are the key strategies that general contractors can support or lead to address embodied carbon in the structures and the buildings? Well, many low-cost, high-impact strategies to reduce embodied carbon require coordination with all key stakeholders early in the project. Contractors' early involvement in this process allow them to provide very valuable feedback regarding procurement, cost, material carbon data, technical feasibility, and more. Then, setting net zero embodied carbon targets early in a project is another crucial step to maximize reductions and also minimize costs. Contractors' feedback early in this process can really help in setting up these baselines and embodied carbon reduction targets for the project. And to tackle embodied carbon, well, reusing buildings is very important. In a recent study we conducted, we have found that when an average performing existing building is demolished and a new energy efficient building is constructed, it takes between 10 to 80 years for the new building to overcome its construction-related emissions through efficient operations. And whenever possible, reusing materials instead of purchasing new products is another great strategy. In our Canada building project, one of the most sustainable buildings on the planet now, our team achieved net positive waste by salvaging and reusing more materials destined to landfills than the amount of waste we generated on site. And considering most of the embodied carbon is typically in the structural system, contractors should work closely with the structural designers and look for ways to achieve maximum efficiency on structural components to reduce the quantities of materials. This process can be expanded to all materials after addressing the big ticket items. And as Stacey mentioned, environmental product declarations or EPDs are great tools telling the life cycle impact story of a product. Project teams can choose low carbon alternatives based on EPDs, and requiring EPDs in specifications will further help contractors to ensure that the necessary carbon disclosure is provided during procurement. Now we have the optimized material quantities and material-specific carbon data in hand. Contractors can play an important role with key milestones in creating and refining project embodied carbon estimates alongside cost data by utilizing tools like Embodied Carbon in Construction Calculator, EC3. And for products that typically have very high embodied carbon footprints, such as asphalt, concrete, and steel, thoughtful use is essential. It's important for contractors and design team to work together to limit such materials and opt for lower carbon alternatives as applicable. When we talk about concrete, well, to reduce the carbon intensity of concrete, it is important to reduce the amount of cement in the mix because it's responsible for 8% of all global CO2 emissions. And contractors should work closely with structural engineers to design low carbon concrete mixes by implementing innovative solutions. Then next step might be using agricultural products such as timber, cork, or hemp insulation that sequester carbon, which is also crucial. In our Portland Airport project, we are building a 9-acre large-span mass timber roofing system, which is regionally and sustainable sourced and reduces the embodied carbon footprint of the project significantly. Next, carbon smart procurement is essential. We can enforce subcontractor bids to contain both the quantity, cost, and carbon data, which enables the bids to be compared with each other and evaluated against the initial carbon targets for the project, which can be done easily with EC3. And while talking about procurement of low carbon materials, we always get the question about the cost premium. In a recent study we published, we found that the embodied carbon footprint for most of the projects can be reduced 30 to 46% with minimal cost premiums, obviously depending on the market conditions. And then as contractors in construction phase, it is essential for us to minimize transportation carbon emissions. Avoiding air freight and using ocean freight for international source materials, or choosing rail transport in lieu of trucking can make a big impact to reduce the embodied carbon footprint of your project. Also in construction phase, it is important to address construction site carbon emissions. Contractors can utilize all electric or hybrid equipment to reduce dependency for fossil fuels, and also evaluate the on-site or off-site renewable energy options for carbon-free energy generation. Then the emissions due to deconstruction and disposal of building materials is part of the embodied carbon story. Contractors should prevent and minimize waste generation. Prefabrication, on-site waste separation, using modular assemblies that are designed for deconstruction are some of the strategies to reduce construction and demolition waste. Then after utilizing all the feasible strategies to actively reduce carbon on site, well, carbon offsets might be considered to achieve net zero. Offsets compensate for the remaining emissions by reducing them elsewhere through renewable energy or forestation programs, for example. But it's key to use offsets as last resort. Overall, well, achieving net zero carbon emissions is feasible via collaboration, setting ambitious targets, and innovation in products, tools, and processes. And general contractors have a key role to play in this process. As a construction company with net zero carbon emissions goals by 2045, I hope you can join us on our journey. Thank you very much.